The world had fallen in a single, merciless campaign. The Zarkari came from the stars, descending in massive warships that blotted out the sun, their fleets cracking open Earth's defenses as though they were paper. The nations of humanity fought bravely, but their weapons were nothing against shields that deflected nuclear fire and soldiers that towered over the tallest man. The war lasted only weeks. By the end, cities burned, the skies were choked with ash, and Earth belonged to the invaders. Colonel Adrian Voss had watched it all unfold. He had seen the orbital bombardments, the mass executions, the iron grip of their new alien overlords closing around his people. And now, he and the last warriors of Earth, what little remained of the once mighty armed forces, hid in the shadows, waiting for a moment that would never come. Or so he thought. Voss adjusted the earpiece of his scavenged communicator, crouching in the depths of an abandoned metro tunnel. The glow of flickering emergency lights cast long shadows over the dozen hardened fighters at his side. Scarred veterans, desperate survivors, and the last embers of Earth's once proud military. The voice on the other end of the transmission was shaky but determined. Coordinates confirmed. The Zarkari Planetary Governor's Command Center is located beneath the ruins of Geneva. It's heavily fortified, but there's a weak point, a power relay deep in the catacombs below. If we can reach it, we can cripple their planetary defenses. Voss exchanged glances with his second-in-command, Sergeant Kira Hale. She was lean, battle-worn, her sharp eyes flickering with something he hadn't seen in a long time, hope. Understood, Voss replied. How long before they detect your signal? A pause. Then, they already have. Static burst through the communicator, followed by a gut-wrenching scream. Then silence. Voss clenched his jaw. Another ally lost. Another friend dead. He turned to his people, his voice steady despite the fury boiling beneath the surface. The Zarkari think they've broken us. He let the words hang, meeting each pair of weary, desperate eyes. They crushed our armies, they burned our cities, and they think that humanity has finally learned to kneel. He took a step forward, his voice rising. They're wrong. A murmur of agreement swept through the fighters, growing into something more, a growl of defiance, the embers of resistance igniting. We have a target, Voss continued. A weakness. If we take it, we take back control. We strike hard, we strike fast, and we make those bastards bleed. Hale smirked. Sounds like a suicide mission. Voss let a grim smile touch his lips. Then we'd better make it count. The resistance moved under cover of darkness, slipping through the ruins of old-world cities, avoiding Zarkari patrols. The streets of Geneva were nothing but shattered glass and twisted steel, remnants of a battle long lost. But the fight wasn't over yet. By the time they reached the entrance to the underground catacombs, the wind howled through the broken skyline, carrying the distant sound of alien machines marching in perfect formation. The Zarkari were always watching, always hunting. Voss signaled for silence, his fingers tightening around his rifle. The enemy's technology was leagues ahead of theirs, plasma weapons that melted through concrete, armor that could withstand tank shells. But humans had something the Zarkari could never understand. A refusal to surrender. Hale tapped his shoulder, pointing toward a distant patrol, a towering Zarkari enforcer, armored in black plating, scanning the ruins with eerie, luminous eyes. A single glance in their direction would mean death. Voss signaled. No guns. Too loud. One of the rebels, a wiry scout named Torres, slipped into the shadows. Moments later, a muffled grunt and the crunch of bone signaled success. The Zarkari warrior crumpled to the ground, its weapon clattering beside it. Voss crouched over the body, grabbing the alien's comm device. He pressed the activation rune, mimicking the guttural Zarkari language as best he could. Perimeter secure. No activity. A pause. Then the device crackled. Copy. Continue patrol. Voss exhaled. They were still ghosts in the ruins. For now. The entrance to the catacombs was a collapsed tunnel leading deep beneath the surface. They moved quickly, disappearing into the earth, into the last hope humanity had left. The real war was about to begin. The air was damp in the underground tunnels, filled with the scent of mold and ancient stone. Voss led his team deeper into the catacombs beneath Geneva, their boots barely making a sound as they navigated the ruins. The Zarkari had never cared to investigate these old human structures, too primitive for their taste. That arrogance was their first mistake. Hale moved beside him, her sharp eyes scanning every shadow. If our intel is right, the power relay should be a few clicks ahead. Voss nodded. The resistance had no margin for error. If they failed to sabotage the relay, the Zarkari planetary defenses would remain intact, and any large-scale uprising would be crushed before it could spread. Behind them, Torres adjusted his grip on his rifle. I still don't get it. Why the hell would an advanced alien empire rely on something as fragile as a single relay? It's not their design, Voss muttered. The Zarkari repurposed our old planetary grid when they conquered Earth. They patched in their systems, but at the core, it's still human infrastructure. Sloppy work. Hale smirked. Typical. They see us as nothing but insects. They'd never expect us to use their own negligence against them. The tunnels stretched for miles, but soon, the dim orange glow of Zarkari energy fields came into view. The resistance team stopped, crouching behind a cluster of jagged stone pillars. Beyond the barrier, the relay station hummed with alien power. 2 Zarkari sentries stood guard, 7 feet tall, clad in thick exoskeletal armor, their glowing weapons slung across their backs. Voss exhaled slowly. We take them down quietly. Hale and Torres nodded. They moved like wraiths, hugging the shadows, blades drawn. In a blur of motion, Hale sprang up behind the first Zarkari, her combat knife slicing through the weak point in its armor at the base of its skull. The alien gurgled, collapsing before it could react. Torres wasn't as clean. His blade sank into the second sentry's throat, but the alien let out a strangled snarl, flailing as it toppled. Its weapon clattered against the ground, sending an echo through the tunnel. Voss's gut tightened. Move. Now. The team surged forward, bypassing the energy barrier using a stolen Zarkari key. Inside, the relay station pulsed with alien light, humming with unnatural energy. Voss sprinted to the control panel, attaching the hacking device their engineers had cobbled together. Come on, he muttered. The seconds dragged as the device worked its way through layers of Zarkari encryption. Then the alarm blared. A mechanical screech echoed through the tunnels as Zarkari reinforcements stormed toward them, plasma rifles glowing with deadly energy. They know we're here. Torres shouted, opening fire. Hale took cover, returning shots. Voss gritted his teeth, eyes locked on the hack's progress. 82%. 89%. 97%, ***. A plasma bolt scorched the console beside him, forcing him to duck. The Zarkari were pushing in fast. One of the rebels screamed as an energy blast tore through his chest. Then the device beeped. 100%. Voss slammed the override. The relay station flickered. Across the planet, Zarkari defenses stuttered, shields dropping, turrets shutting down. It was done. Fall back. Voss roared. The resistance fighters broke for the tunnels, plasma fire scorching the walls around them. The mission had succeeded, but the war was far from over. Above them, the fires of rebellion had been lit. And soon, all of Earth would rise. The first cracks in the Zarkari's hold over Earth had formed. With the planetary defense grid disrupted, resistance cells across the globe had received the signal. It was time to rise. Reports flooded in from underground networks, prison camps being overrun, supply convoys ambushed, and alien patrols vanishing into the night. For the first time since the invasion, humanity was striking back. But victories came with consequences. Voss and his team had barely escaped the Geneva catacombs, and now they were hunted. Zarkari gunships prowled the skies, scanning the ruins with their searchlights. Drones filled the air, seeking any trace of human heat signatures. The invaders were enraged. In the shadows of an old industrial district, Voss studied the holomap spread out on the floor of their hideout. The room was a rusted-out shell of a long-forgotten warehouse, its walls pockmarked by past battles. The team had only minutes to rest. Hale leaned against the wall, checking her rifle's energy cell. "We hit them hard, but they're adapting. We can't keep fighting like rats in the dark forever." Voss's jaw tightened. She wasn't wrong. This was only the beginning. A distant explosion rumbled through the city, shaking dust from the ceiling. Torres peered through the shattered window. That came from the outer district. Could be one of ours. Voss activated his communicator, cycling through the encrypted channels. Static filled his ears before a voice broke through. "Commander Ellison, leader of one of the largest resistance cells in Europe. Voss, we just took the northern district. Zarkari forces are in full retreat. We captured one of their supply outposts, ammunition, food, even some of their weapons." Voss exhaled. A victory. But for how long? Before he could respond, another voice cut through. Desperate. Panicked. "This is Delta Cell, we're under heavy fire. The Zarkari, they're sending something new. We can't." The transmission dissolved into screams. Then silence. The air in the room grew thick. Voss met Hale's gaze. No words were needed. The Zarkari were adapting, and fast. "Pack up," Voss ordered. "We're moving out." They traveled under cover of night, slipping through the ruins like ghosts. The streets were littered with debris, abandoned cars, shattered buildings, the remnants of a war humanity had already lost once. As they neared the outer district, the scent of burning flesh filled the air. The remains of the Delta Cell resistance fighters were scattered across the street, their bodies torn apart, limbs seared by something far worse than standard Zarkari plasma weapons. Torres swallowed hard. What the hell did this? Voss found his answer when he looked ahead. The Zarkari had unleashed something new. Standing amidst the carnage were monstrous figures, taller than normal Zarkari warriors, clad in reinforced exoskeletons with burning red eyes. Their weapons weren't standard plasma rifles. They carried massive, glowing blades, the edges radiating with an energy that shimmered like liquid fire. Shock troops. The Zarkari weren't just trying to crush the rebellion. They were evolving their tactics to exterminate it. Hale clenched her jaw. How do we fight that? Voss watched as one of the creatures lifted the body of a fallen human, its blade igniting as it sliced the corpse in half with terrifying ease. A message. A warning. He tightened his grip on his rifle. "We don't fight them head-on," he said. "We outthink them." The war had truly begun. The night sky was filled with the crackling hum of alien technology as Zarkari warships hovered overhead. Massive and silent, they scanned the ruins below, their eyes cold, unblinking. The invasion had already crushed Earth once. Now, the Zarkari were determined to snuff out the final vestiges of rebellion. The old world was burning, but the fire of humanity's resistance was not so easily extinguished. Voss and his team had barely escaped the shock troops. The streets were littered with fallen fighters, both human and Zarkari. Every step forward felt like a death sentence. And yet, they moved forward, because that's what humans did, they pushed back, no matter the odds. "Report in," Voss barked as they took shelter in a dilapidated office building. The weight of the situation was pressing on him, he could feel it in his bones. Every minute, every decision could mean the difference between life and death for his people. Torres scanned the rooftops through binoculars. "Zarkari reinforcements are converging on our position. They're bringing in more of those shock troops." He turned to Voss. "We can't outrun this." "We don't need to outrun them," Voss replied, his voice sharp and focused. "We just need to delay them. Give the others time to regroup." Hale, who had been tinkering with a set of stolen alien explosives, looked up. "We've got one shot at this, Voss. Those shock troops are the key." If we can hit them hard enough, maybe we can slow the rest of the Zarkari down long enough to finish what we started. Voss considered the plan. They had no time to waste. The Zarkari were sweeping the city, hunting for every last trace of human resistance. The shock troops, these monstrous new soldiers, were the final piece of the invaders' puzzle, and Voss knew they had to be stopped. We hit them where it hurts, Voss decided. We draw them in, hit them with everything we've got, and give the rest of humanity a chance to rise up. The next few hours were a blur of preparation. The team moved quickly, planting explosives along key choke points and setting up makeshift barricades in strategic locations. Hale, Torres, and the rest of the team scattered across the district, setting traps, hacking Zarkari surveillance systems, and cutting down any patrols that ventured too close. Voss stood by the map, studying the layout of the city. The shock troops would be coming through the central district, passing along the main thoroughfare. If they could ambush them there, they could cripple their forces. It wasn't much, but it was the best shot they had. The sound of boots thudding against the concrete echoed in the distance. The Zarkari were getting closer. "Get ready," Voss ordered. He nodded to Hale. "You and Torres will take the lead. We'll draw them in and then hit them hard." As the minutes ticked by, the tension in the air grew unbearable. The city had fallen silent, save for the distant hum of Zarkari machinery. The shock troops were coming. They could feel it in their bones. Then, as if on cue, the first shock troop appeared at the far end of the street. Towering over the ruins, its glowing red eyes scanned the area. The soldiers that followed were even more monstrous, their energy blades crackling with unnatural power. Voss's heart raced. This was it. "Now," he hissed, signaling Hale and Torres. They moved swiftly, cutting through the shadows as Voss and the remaining fighters opened fire from their positions. The first wave of Zarkari shock troops faltered, caught in the crossfire. But they didn't break. Instead, they charged forward, their blades slashing through the air with deadly precision. "Fall back!" Voss shouted, pulling the team deeper into the trap. They led the Zarkari deeper into the heart of the district, where the explosives were waiting. As the shock troops advanced, Hale triggered the first blast. The ground shook violently as a massive explosion rocked the street, sending chunks of debris flying in every direction. The shock troops reeled, momentarily disoriented. But they were not done yet. More Zarkari reinforcements poured in, and the battle quickly turned into a brutal exchange of gunfire and plasma strikes. The shock troops surged forward, relentless in their pursuit. But the humans didn't back down. They fought with a ferocity that the Zarkari had never encountered before, gritty, determined, and filled with a sense of purpose. In the chaos, Voss and his team moved in, planting explosive charges at key points along the Zarkari formation. They knew they couldn't win this fight by brute force alone. They needed to cripple the Zarkari shock troops, weaken their morale, and slow them down. Finally, with a deafening roar, the final charges detonated. A massive explosion engulfed the Zarkari forces, sending a wave of fire and shockwaves rippling through the street. The Zarkari shock troops were gone. For now. Voss stood amid the wreckage, panting, his clothes torn, his face streaked with dirt and blood. The victory had come at a cost, several rebels had fallen in the fight, but they had struck a blow the Zarkari would not soon forget. "Not bad for a bunch of rebels," Hale said, a weary grin creeping onto her face. Voss didn't smile. There was still too much at stake. The Zarkari were wounded, but they weren't broken. And neither were they. The war had only just begun. The Zarkari had underestimated humanity once more. Their shock troops had been broken, their forces scattered, but they weren't going to give up so easily. The invaders had learned from the first battle, and now they were more vicious, more relentless. They could feel it in the air, the calm before the storm. Voss's team moved in a tight formation through the ruins of the old city. Their mission had just escalated. No longer were they fighting just for survival, they were fighting for a chance to deliver a final blow to the Zarkari. The ultimate target had been identified, the Zarkari's planetary governor, a towering figure known as Cormac, sat at the heart of their operations in the heavily fortified citadel known as the Throne. For the past few weeks, Voss and his team had been gathering intel, striking when and where they could. But now, they had one objective: to reach the Throne, penetrate its defenses, and eliminate Cormac. Without the governor, the Zarkari would be left without a leader, a power vacuum that could shatter their command structure. The streets had fallen silent again, save for the distant hum of alien patrols. Earth's rebellion had reached a boiling point. What began as a few scattered cells now grew into something larger, more organized, more daring. Resistance groups from across the planet were converging, preparing for the final assault. If they could take Cormac down, the galaxy would hear humanity's roar. But it wouldn't be easy. "Intel's clear," Hale muttered as she checked her rifle. "Cormac's fortress is surrounded by a literal wall of Zarkari elites. If we want in, we're going to need to make a hell of a lot of noise." Voss nodded. He was under no illusion. The Throne was more than a military installation, it was a symbol of the Zarkari's dominion over Earth. Its walls were reinforced with advanced alien alloys, and the air above it was guarded by fleets of drone ships. No one had ever breached its gates. "Get ready," Voss ordered. "We hit them fast. We hit them hard. And we don't stop until Cormac's dead." The team moved quickly, bypassing the outer defenses. With the Zarkari stretched thin, there were fewer patrols around the city outskirts. They made it to the Citadel's base before dawn, where they would begin their final assault. The perimeter was protected by a field of energy barriers and automated turrets that could turn a human into ash in an instant. Hale had already hacked into the Zarkari surveillance systems, disabling the outer perimeter, but time was against them. They had no more than an hour before the Zarkari sent reinforcements to investigate. "You know what to do," Voss said. "Hale, Torres, you two take the high ground. The rest of us will create a diversion. As soon as you're in position, we move in." Voss's team spread out, finding their positions among the rubble of the city. The Throne loomed ahead, an imposing spire of metallic alien architecture that gleamed ominously in the dim light of early morning. The walls were thick with energy fields, and the Zarkari forces around it were numerous. But humanity had something the Zarkari could never fathom: creativity. Hale and Torres climbed the shattered remains of a nearby skyscraper, making their way to a vantage point above the citadel. The rest of the team positioned themselves along a secondary approach. Voss checked his watch. "Ready?" A brief crackle came through the comms. "Ready," Hale's voice came back, crisp and focused. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Voss's team would create a distraction on one side of the fortress, drawing the bulk of the Zarkari forces away from the main entrance. Meanwhile, Hale and Torres would drop in from above and clear a path. And then, they would find Cormac. "Go!" Voss shouted. A barrage of grenades, explosives, and gunfire lit up the early morning sky. The earth trembled as the team created chaos, disabling Zarkari drones, exploding vehicles, and setting off shockwaves of destruction. The Zarkari forces began to converge on the source of the noise, leaving the front gates of the citadel less defended. Up above, Hale and Torres swooped down like predators. From their high vantage, they picked off Zarkari sentries one by one. Their precision was terrifying, their movements flawless as they wove between enemy fire, moving ever closer to the heart of the citadel. In the chaos below, Voss and the others rushed to the gates. They shot down the last of the straggling patrols and moved swiftly, cutting through the defenses with brutal efficiency. The massive doors to the Throne's interior opened before them, revealing the eerie silence of the alien stronghold. The team pushed inside, rifles raised, hearts pounding. "This is it," Voss said. "We breach, we kill Cormac, and we get the hell out." They moved down endless corridors, avoiding Zarkari patrols as they advanced deeper into the heart of the citadel. At the end of the long hall stood the doors to Cormac's throne room, imposing, reinforced, and heavily guarded. Voss signaled for the team to stop. "The final push," he whispered. They charged, breaking through the doors in a hail of gunfire, only to find the throne room empty. Cormac was gone. A voice, distorted by the Zarkari comm system, crackled through their earpieces. "Did you think we wouldn't be ready? You are too late, humans. Cormac is safe. Your efforts are futile." The Zarkari had anticipated them. Voss's heart sank. The fight wasn't over yet. The enemy had seen them coming. And they had a trap waiting. Voss stood in the center of the throne room, the echo of the Zarkari voice still lingering in the comms. His team was tense, weapons aimed, every inch of their senses alert. They'd been set up, lured into the heart of the citadel only to find an empty throne and a mocking message. "You think you can outwit us?" the voice crackled again, its alien cadence seeping into their minds like poison. "We have been watching you from the start. Every move you make. Every leader you take down. You are nothing but children playing at war. Cormac is safe. And your rebellion, ends here." Voss clenched his fists. The war was about to reach its zenith, and the Zarkari were making their final stand. "We're not children," Hale growled, her knuckles white on her rifle. "We're warriors." The walls of the throne room hummed, and the air seemed to grow heavier. Then the floor beneath them shook violently, followed by the deafening sound of massive engines roaring to life. Voss glanced up as the ceiling above them opened, revealing a network of turrets and shielded domes, an aerial fleet of Zarkari warships descending rapidly. "They've sealed us in," Torres muttered. "We're trapped." The ground trembled as the warships deployed an army of mechanical drones, their sleek bodies buzzing like locusts. The Zarkari weren't merely going to kill them, they were going to wipe them out, completely and utterly. "We can't fight our way out," Voss said, his voice low but resolute. "But we don't need to. We just need to buy time." Hale turned to him, understanding flashing in her eyes. "We'll hold them off long enough for you to get to Cormac. You've got a shot at him, don't you?" Voss nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at him. He didn't have a plan for what came next. His gut told him they were facing more than just Zarkari arrogance, there was something more. The invaders knew they were coming, and they prepared a response. But Voss had never been the type to back down. He grabbed his communicator and spoke into it, his voice steady. "We're in position. Hold the line. We fight until the last." With a single sharp movement, he pulled his team into position. They spread out, barricading themselves against the walls, setting traps along the corridors leading into the throne room. There was no more time for subtlety, this fight was going to be bloody and brutal. Suddenly, the floor beneath them cracked open, and the Zarkari elite forces poured into the room. They were monstrous in stature, encased in exo-armored suits and wielding weapons capable of ripping through steel. They came at the humans with relentless precision, and the ground seemed to pulse beneath their heavy footsteps. Torres fired first, sending a volley of bullets into the chest of the closest Zarkari soldier. The alien armor absorbed most of the impact, but the shock still knocked the warrior back. Hale followed, using her explosive charges to send one of the Zarkari drones into a fiery explosion. Voss moved forward, firing with deadly accuracy. He aimed for the weak points in the Zarkari exoskeletons, joints, underarms, and the vulnerable neck area. They had trained for this. They knew how to strike. But the Zarkari kept coming, wave after wave. Voss could feel the tide of battle shift as the elite warriors surrounded them. Every minute of resistance was a victory, but every second brought them closer to the inevitable. Their ammunition was running low, and their position was being overrun. In the chaos, Hale shot a glance at Voss. "We're almost out of options, Voss. You've got to go now. We'll cover you." Voss hesitated for a moment, his eyes scanning the faces of his team. They were his family now. His responsibility. But they knew the stakes. They'd known what this fight would cost. "Go," Hale urged. "Now." Voss made the hardest decision of his life. He turned and sprinted toward the far end of the throne room. He wasn't just fighting for humanity anymore. This was for every life lost, for every person who had resisted. The Zarkari had taken too much. And now, they would feel the weight of humanity's rage. He reached the far wall, where a hidden passage led deeper into the citadel. As he moved into the shadows, the sound of explosions filled the air. His team was holding the line, but the clock was ticking. Deep within the citadel, past layers of alien architecture and defenses, Voss found himself standing in front of a massive chamber. The walls were lined with Zarkari technology, computers, energy conduits, and advanced weaponry. At the center of the room was a throne, and sitting upon it was Cormac. The governor looked down at Voss with disdain. He was tall, even by Zarkari standards, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly fire. He wore armor that shimmered with alien energy, and the air around him crackled with power. "Human," Cormac's voice boomed. "You've come to die, like the rest of your kind. You think you can take me down? Your species has no future. Your time is over." Voss didn't flinch. He'd heard the Zarkari boast before. This time, the speech wouldn't save him. "You're wrong, Cormac," Voss said, his voice steady. "We're not here to beg for mercy. We're here to end this." Before Cormac could respond, Voss drew his weapon. In a single, fluid motion, he fired the first shot. The air around them hummed, and the bullet, powered by human ingenuity, hit its mark, right at the center of Cormac's chest. The Zarkari governor let out a strangled growl as he staggered, his energy shields flickering. He swiped at the air in a desperate attempt to retaliate, but Voss was already on the move, firing again. The second shot struck Cormac in the throat, piercing the armor and sending a shockwave of energy throughout the citadel. Cormac's body crumpled to the ground, lifeless. Voss stood over him, chest heaving with adrenaline. For the first time in years, the weight of the war seemed to lift, even if just for a moment. The Zarkari's leader had fallen. But the war wasn't over. Not yet. The echo of Cormac's fall reverberated through the citadel. The last of the Zarkari's leadership had crumbled beneath humanity's will, but the victory felt hollow in the silence that followed. Voss stood over the alien's lifeless form, his weapon still raised, eyes locked on the now quiet chamber. The hum of energy shields, the thrum of Zarkari technology, all of it felt distant, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. It wasn't over. Not yet. The Zarkari had left behind a powerful war machine, and Voss knew it would take more than the fall of one leader to break the grip they had over Earth. But the tide had turned. Voss turned away from Cormac's body, his mind already on the next step. He activated his comm device. "This is Voss. The governor is down. We've struck a critical blow. Hold your positions, reinforcements are on their way. It's time to finish this." The voice of his second-in-command, Hale, came through the comms. "You did it, Voss. We're holding the line here, but we're running out of time. The Zarkari's reinforcements are getting closer. We need to move, or we'll be surrounded." Voss nodded grimly. "Hold tight. We'll get you out. Prepare to evacuate once the signal is given." The rest of the team had done their part. The rebels had fought valiantly, even in the face of overwhelming odds, and now, they were on the cusp of victory. Voss's mission was complete, but the war was far from over. The Zarkari may have been weakened, but they were not gone. Yet, Voss had always known that humanity's strength wasn't in their numbers. It was in their ability to adapt, to improvise, to survive. He made his way back to the command center, where Hale and the others were holding their ground against the Zarkari forces trying to reclaim the citadel. The walls of the throne room were now pocked with gunfire, and the lights flickered in response to the power surges caused by the firefights. Voss felt the weight of the decision ahead. Humanity's future depended on what came next. The ground shook again, this time more violently. A fleet of Zarkari warships had entered the atmosphere, their black, angular forms casting ominous shadows over the Earth's surface. Their massive cannons glowed, powered up for their final assault. "They're bringing everything they've got," Hale reported. "We can't fight them all, not like this." Voss's gaze flickered to the command center's main screen, which displayed the advancing alien fleet. The remaining Zarkari warships had set their sights on the Citadel and Earth itself. The last line of defense was quickly crumbling. "We're not fighting them head-on," Voss said, his voice unwavering. "We've got one last move. It's now or never." He turned toward Torres, who had been working on hacking into the Citadel's mainframe. "Torres, can we access their weapons systems?" Torres's fingers flew over the control panel, and his eyes lit up. "Got it. The Citadel has an override system linked to their fleet's weapons, but it's risky. If I send the signal, we could trigger a chain reaction that disables their entire fleet." "Do it." Voss's voice was firm. He didn't hesitate. They didn't have time to second-guess. "Make sure that fleet never fires a shot." Torres worked quickly, hacking into the alien systems and bypassing the firewalls. As the countdown began on the screen, the tension in the room grew unbearable. The fate of the rebellion rested in this final act. The massive warships loomed closer, their cannons ready to unleash devastation. The hum of energy in the air became oppressive. "Signals going out," Torres said. "Now or never." There was a long pause. Then, suddenly, the Citadel's systems surged to life. The screens flashed red, and the warship's cannons powered down in unison. An eerie silence filled the room. "The fleet is offline," Torres said, a grin spreading across his face. "It worked. They can't fire." A wave of relief washed over the room, but it was brief. Voss knew this was just a temporary reprieve. The Zarkari would find another way to retaliate, but this was humanity's moment to strike. "We need to move fast," Voss said, his voice hardening again. "We've got to get out and rally the forces across the planet. The Zarkari may not be finished yet, but we are not backing down." Hale gave a determined nod. "We're not done until Earth is free." The team made their way to the escape corridors, securing vital data as they moved. They knew the battle wasn't over, but for the first time, they had a chance. The Zarkari had been stopped, their fleets crippled, their leadership shattered. Humanity had proven something the galaxy had never imagined: even against overwhelming odds, they would fight. And they would win. As the team moved through the corridors of the Citadel, the distant sounds of Zarkari forces growing more desperate echoed behind them. They had no time to savor the victory, but the flame of hope burned brighter than ever. The war would continue, but now, it was humanity that held the advantage. Voss's heart pounded in his chest. They had done it. Earth had resisted, and now, the galaxy would have to listen. The Zarkari may have been giants, but humanity had proven that even the smallest of forces could stand tall when they refused to kneel. And as the first light of dawn crept across the horizon, a new chapter in the history of Earth began. The rebellion had ignited a spark, and now, the galaxy would see what humanity was truly capable of.